What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another episode of NHL Over or Under. This series dates back a few years now. I like to make a couple of these videos before each NHL season starts. If you're new to the channel and you've never seen one of these before, it's a pretty simple concept. I make a post on the community tab asking you guys to name a player and a point total, and I go through, pick out a bunch of your guys' comments, and in a video I try and predict if the player you named will finish this season over or under the given point total. As always, when it comes to these videos, feel free to play along down below in the comments, and if you enjoy this series and you want to see a couple of more episodes before the season begins, then be sure to leave the video a like. That is the best way to let me know that you enjoyed. So with that all being said, let's go ahead and start off with the first comment from Nhl, who says, Matvei Michkov over or under 25 goals. Seems like he is definitely capable, but it will be interesting to see how his game translates over. I'm going to go ahead and take the under on this one. I know Matvei Michkov is an incredibly dynamic offensive player, but this past season, the Flyers were one of the worst offensive teams in the league. They were 6th last in goals for per game at just 2.82. The only two players on the roster that cracked the 25 goal mark were Travis Konecny and Owen Tippett. Adding somebody to the lineup with the offensive capabilities that Matvei Michkov possesses, I do think it's reasonable to assume their offense and their power play may get a little bit better, but I still think Philadelphia offensively this season is going to be mediocre at best. And also, when it comes to rookies, I like to keep my expectations in check. If you're expecting a rookie to come in and be, a 30-40 goal scorer and just completely turn a franchise around right away, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure and setting yourself up to be disappointed. I don't think anybody should be all that surprised if Matvei Michkov struggles a little bit out of the gate and takes a little while to adjust. So for those reasons, I'm taking the under, but Michkov is definitely a player that's at the top of my list of guys that I'm really excited to watch this season. And this is a prediction that I actually hope ends up being wrong, because I'd love to see him come over and light it up right away. Next up, this comment comes from Albertin, who says, Jeff Skinner over or under 60 points. I definitely feel he'll get a lot more opportunities in Edmonton, considering he'll be playing with McDavid or Draisaitl. I'm going to go ahead and take the over on this one. Jeff Skinner signed a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Edmonton Oilers this offseason, which in my opinion is one of the more underrated additions of the entire offseason. Sure, Jeff Skinner isn't a guy you want on your roster making $9 million a season, which is what he was making before being bought out by the Buffalo Sabres, but on a 1-year deal with a cap hit of just $3 million, I think he's going to provide the Edmonton Oilers with a ton of value. This is a guy who prior to this past season had back-to-back 30-plus goal, 60-plus point seasons, and Jeff Skinner was actually over a point per game with 82 points in 79 games in the 2022-23 season, and that was while playing on the Buffalo Sabres. And no disrespect to Buffalo, they were actually one of the better offensive teams in the league in 2022-23, but like you said in this comment, there's a very strong chance Jeff Skinner ends up on a line with either Draisaitl or McDavid. Moving along now, this next comment comes from Jakey Juke, who says, Gabe Landeskog over or under 30 points. If he does play this season, how much can he even contribute? Maybe a serious question. So the latest that we've heard on Gabe Landeskog is that he's not going to be ready for opening night, but there's a chance he could return near the start of the season. So it definitely sounds like Landeskog is going to be playing at some point this season, barring a major setback, and fingers crossed that doesn't happen. Whether he's able to hit 30 points or not, it's a pretty, obvious answer here, but I think it all just comes down to how much he's going to play. I feel like it would be unfair to Gabe Landeskog to expect him to come back and immediately start producing like he did, the 3-4 seasons before he missed all this time, where he was a guy that's, usually around a point per game. But let's just say that Gabe Landeskog is able to play 60 or so games for the Avalanche this season, then I would take the over on 30 points. I think it's reasonable to expect that Landeskog is still a guy that would be able to score at a little bit above a half point per game pace. Jake Evans has finished with 20 or more points in 2 of the last 4 seasons, and the 2 seasons out of those 4 he didn't reach that mark, he still scored at a 20-plus point pace. So as long as Jake Evans is able to appear in at least 60 to 70 games for the Montreal Canadiens, I don't see any reason why he's not going to be able to reach the 20-point mark pretty easily, so I'll take the over here. This next comment comes from 4U2NV Hockey, who says, over or under 30 goals, Patrik Laine. Fresh start in Montreal now and hopefully healthy. I'm taking the over on this one as well. I think Patrik Laine has a lot to prove heading into this upcoming season. He should come in with a chip on his shoulder. It seems like a lot of people have forgotten what this guy's capable of. Prior to this past season, where he only played in 18 games, he was right around a point per game in the 2 seasons prior with the Blue Jackets, 26 goals in 56 games in 2021-22 and 22 goals in 55 games in 2022-23. Patrik Laine is one of the best pound-for-pound natural goal scorers in the NHL, the kind of player that should be able to score 30 goals in a season with his eyes closed. He's somebody that I'm definitely going to be rooting for. He should be playing with some really talented players in Montreal's top 6 and be a focal point of their power play. As long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to easily break the 30 goal mark. This next comment comes from Hockey Fan at 1083 who says, Jake Guentzel over or under 95 points. This is a really tough one for me. His career high in points is 84. I think he's going to be a really good fit for Tampa Bay. My expectation is around 40 goals and 80-ish points, similar to the career year that he had back in 2021-22. So I'm going to take the under, but I would not be surprised at all if I end up being wrong here and Jake Guentzel pops off and has the best season of his career. Offensive production seems to just continue to rise year after year in the NHL these days, and Nikita Kucherov, who is Jake Guentzel's new teammate, potentially new line mate, just had a year where he put up 100 assists. So if Jake Guentzel finds himself on a line with Kucherov and those two guys click, you never know what kind of numbers he could put up in Tampa Bay. Moving on now, the next comment we have comes from Twitchin' Jalapeno who says, Cole Perfetti over or under 55 points, underutilized last season, but should be given more opportunity with the exits of Monahan and Toffoli. This one is an easy over for me. I think Cole Perfetti is in for a big breakthrough season. Like you mentioned, he was underutilized last season, didn't get a ton of minutes, and was a healthy scratch for all but one playoff game. Despite that, he was still able to finish with 19 goals and 19 assists for 38 points in 71 games. Looking at the Winnipeg Jets depth chart heading into next season, I think Perfetti is a guy who should be a staple in their top 6. Sure, his name has been thrown around quite a bit in trade rumors throughout the summer, but I think that's just because, again, he was a healthy scratch in all but one of their playoff games, and he's still a restricted free agent, doesn't have an extension yet. But to me, it would be a mistake if the Winnipeg Jets were to trade Cole Perfetti, especially now before he's really had his big breakthrough. To me, this is a guy they should keep around because I think he has the potential to be a massive part of their future. Next up, this comment comes from Adam Warren who says, Macklin Celebrini over or under 55.5 points. It's funny, I was actually looking at NHL.com's fantasy projections the other day, and their point projection for Macklin Celebrini is 60, and that's kind of where I'm at. My expectation is right around 50 to 60 points. Celebrini's the guy who's obviously expected to be a franchise-altering player for the San Jose Sharks. That being said, there's not going to be a ton of talent around Macklin Celebrini with the Sharks in his rookie season. Last season, San Jose finished second last in the entire NHL in goals for per game at just 2.2. I can't imagine their offense is going to be that bad again this season, but it still isn't going to be great. And also, if you look at the performances of first overall draft picks in their rookie years over the last 4, 5, 6 seasons, with the exception of the year Connor Bedard just had, the majority of those first overall draft picks have struggled out of the gate. And also, going back to what I said when talking about Matvei Michkov, I like to keep my expectations in check when it comes to rookies, so I'm going to take the under here, but I don't think it's going to be by much. Moving on now to the next comment. This one comes from Ambassador in Chains who says, Dylan Holloway 30 points. It's a small sample size. Holloway has only appeared in 89 regular season games thus far in his NHL career, but in those 89 games, he hasn't been a big-time point producer at all. That being said, in those 89 games, his ice time has been very limited. You have to imagine that he's going to get a much larger opportunity and get a lot more minutes in St. Louis. Offer sheets in the NHL are very rare these days, so I'm assuming St. Louis really liked the player, obviously enough to go out and offer sheet him. Holloway is obviously a guy who has the skill to become a player who scores well over 30 points a season. He was a 14th overall draft pick for a reason, and he's definitely shown flashes of that skill throughout his NHL career so far, and I actually liked what I saw from him in the Edmonton Oilers run to the Stanley Cup Finals. So with all that being said, I'm going to take the over here, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's only slightly over, like maybe he finishes around 35 to 40 points, which I think would still be a really strong first season in St. Louis. Next up, this comment comes from Miles Stifler who says, Connor Bedard over or under 82.5 points. I personally think he will go over with improved offensive weapons around him. I think a 40 plus goal, 40 plus assist season is very possible. I'm right there with you. This is an easy over for me. In his rookie season on a very bad Blackhawks team, he was only 7 points shy of being a point per game player. And like you mentioned, there's definitely some improved offensive weapons around him after signing guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen. You also have to consider the fact that Taylor Hall is going to be back and hopefully healthy for a full season. I still feel like the Blackhawks are quite a ways away from being a legit playoff contender, but they should definitely be a little bit better than they were last season. And I think a big reason for for that will be, again, some of the veterans they brought in to put a more competitive team around Connor Bedard, but I think the biggest reason why they're going to be an improved team is because I'm expecting Connor Bedard to take a massive step forward this season. Next up, this comment comes from Barzell_13, who says, Linus Ullmark over under 32 wins. Some people are very high on him, but I'm not sure he can produce as much as he could in Boston with that Sens team. I get what you're saying, but I do feel like the Senators are a better team than people give them credit for. Sure, they had a disappointing season, but a big reason for that is because they got very poor goaltending. They've now added a guy who over the last few seasons in Boston has been one of the best starting goaltenders in the league. He was the best goaltender in the league in 2023, won the Vezina Trophy. 32 wins is still quite a bit. He only won 22 this past season in Boston, but that's because he was splitting starts with Swayman. I imagine he's going to start upwards to 60 games in Ottawa if he's healthy. I'm going to take the under here, but I don't think it's going to be by a whole lot. My expectation is he finishes with maybe around 25 to 30-ish wins. And now finally finishing off the video with this last comment, which comes from Wilhelm Norell, who says, Elias Lindholm over or under 75.5 points. Sure, his numbers have came back down to earth quite a bit over these last few seasons after having a career year in 2021-22 where he finished with 42 goals and 82 points in 82 games. He's only had 2 seasons in his career where he's finished with 75 or more points, so I'm leaning towards the under here, but in Boston, he's going to be the #1 center, and he's likely going to be on a line with David Pastrnak, who's not only one of the best wingers, but one of the best players in the entire league. And Elias Lindholm is a guy who has shown in previous years that he's capable of making magic with superstar players. That line of Tkachuk, Gaudreau, and Lindholm in 2021-22 was one of the best, maybe the best lines in the entire league. Again, I feel like this one's a toss-up. I'm going to take the under, but I don't think it's going to be by much, and I also wouldn't be surprised at all if I'm very wrong here and Lindholm has a career year in Boston. So that is going to wrap up today's episode of NHL Over or Under. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're a fan of this series and you want to see a couple of more episodes before the regular season begins, then be sure to leave this video a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does actually help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.